Recently, Skyblock had some balancing updates that affected the meta of how to do Enderman Slayers. In light of this news, I decided to try to figure out what works best for me and share that information to the public in hopes I could help someone out. Without further ado, here's how I personally suggest you do Enderman Slayer. So, a brand new, bare bones setup to attempt Enderman Slayer would be along the lines of armoring up with full Shadow Assassin armor with growth protection and rejuvenate 5, arming yourself with a livid dagger with decent enchants, nothing fancy. For utility, grab a Pigman Sword, Wand of Mending, a Power Orb of your choice, and a Soul Whip with Mana Steel 3. As for choosing a companion for this endeavor, there are many options I could think of for starting out. If you're struggling to survive, use a more defense-oriented pet, like the turtle or blue whale. If you can survive but just aren't dishing out as much damage as you'd like, try a pet like tiger or wither skeleton. If you want something in between offense and defense, use an Enderman or griffin pet. Before I get too far into the video, I want to mention the final endgame setup that I personally use and would suggest, just so you have an idea of how much money you need. I use full Final Destination armor with Wisdom, Growth, Protection, and Rejuvenate 5, an Atomsplit Katana with the works, a Pigman Sword, Wand of Atonement, Overflux Power Orb, a Soul Whip with Mana Steel 3, and a Summoning Ring with 2 Red Room mini-bosses from Floor 6. For a pet, I use the Ender Dragon with Bubblegum to help the Power Orb last the whole duration of the fight. And I also want to mention that your profile stats are definitely a factor. I would suggest getting basically all the Fairy Souls, and make sure you have a lot of talismans acquired before you attempt the higher tiers of Enderman Slayer, just to name a few prerequisites. Finally, if you still have any questions about Enderman Slayer, feel free to post a comment and I'll see what I can do to advise you. Now that you know what about to start with and what your goal should be, let me show you how to go about doing a Tier 1 Enderman Slayer for starters. I've put timestamps in the description if you think you're too good to start out from the bottom and want to skip a step or two, up to you. If you're previously mentioned starting gear equipped, complete some Tier 1 Ender Slayers by doing the following. Place your Power Orb of choice right before you spawn the boss, and feel free to wait a couple seconds to regen some of the mana you lost. When the boss spawns, use the Wand of Mending, Pigman Sword ability, and hit the boss with your Soul Whip until the shield is gone. Damage the boss with your Livid Dagger until its shield comes back up, then repeat using the Pigman Sword ability and the Soul Whip to deplete the shield. Some quick things to note. The Pigman Sword and the Wand of Mending's abilities cost a hefty chunk of mana if spammed off cooldown, so be mindful of that. Also, higher up the Enderman Slayer chain, I would suggest using Bubblegum as a pet item to guarantee your Power Orb does not run out. At Slayer level 2, craft some lesser Soulflow engines and slap those bad boys in some Tier 11 snow minions to make them start producing Soulflow for later down the line. If you really want to be able to do Tier 4 Enderman Slayers with relative ease, progress at your own pace to gather all the equipment mentioned that I use. Once you're comfortable with the process of cycling weapons and using them at the right time, step it up to a Tier 2. It's basically the same strategy as a Tier 1, but the boss does more damage, so using your utility items sparingly but efficiently is good practice. Oh yeah, don't forget about the boss yeeting a beacon across the map. You gotta chase that sucker down and Goomba stomp it before it blows up. At this point, I would suggest grinding out Tier 2 Slayer bosses until you reach Slayer level 4, but feel free to experiment with what you think would work as well. When you have unlocked Final Destination armor, get a full set, reforge and enchant it, take a breather, and go kill some zealots. I think 10,000 kills would be a long enough break. And make sure you wear the full set while grinding zealots to gain the stacking defense bonus. Now that you're looking cool in that Final Destination armor, all geared up with your utility items and a Vorpal Katana that I totally forgot to mention after Enderman Slayer 5, try to tackle some Tier 3 bosses. If you can't seem to consistently complete the Tier 3 boss quests, check back with the basics and make sure your stats are good enough to fight these guys. I'm going to glance over how to fight Tier 3 Enderman because 1, it's basically the same tactic for every tier, and 2, I'm kinda lazy, and 3, Tier 3s are only good for Slayer XP, so get to acquiring the stuff to do a Tier 4 sooner rather than later. The strategy for a Tier 4 Enderman Slayer is similar to all the others, but the boss has a few more tricks up its sleeve. To start off, place your Power Orb and summon your boys right before you spawn the boss. Again, feel free to wait a few seconds to regenerate some mana. When the boss spawns, take 1 hit of damage from it so your boys aggro the boss and delete its shield. Stay far enough away from the boss so that you don't take AoE damage, but be close enough for your boys to keep aggressing the shield. Using your Soul Whip can help a little during the shield phase to regenerate some mana. Once the shield is gone, use in order the Wand of Atonement with a 7-second duration, Pigman Sword, make sure it activates, and then the Katana right-click. Wail on the boss until your sword whimpers, then repeat using the utility items again until the boss takes a seat and starts its laser show. Use the jump boost effect to help dodge the lasers, all the while mashing right-click with your Soul Whip to regain as much mana as you can. When the laser show's over, go back to using your utility items to bring the boss down to the next shield phase, and repeat that too. After the second shield is gone, the boss will start to throw the previously mentioned beacons all willy-nilly around the map, so keep that in mind while you repeat the process. During the final phase, in addition to the beacons, the boss will start to produce mini-me's that you must win a staring contest against to destroy. Don't let them pile up, or you will lose the staring contest and forfeit your life. It took me some practice to get used to all the item swapping, ability using, and mana/health management, but it paid off in the long run. So don't let a tier 3 or 4 boss discourage you because you misclick a few times. Just either practice on a lower tier you can survive, or brute force it until you succeed. I'm not here to judge. I'm here to guide. And hopefully that's what this video did for you. Guide you in the right direction to give you some ideas and a place to start for the horrible money void that is Enderman Slayer.